We're all in this together has become one of the cliches of the age of austerity, but by all of us, the government also means people with disabilities. Well, earlier tonight, the government won a vote in the House of Lords on a bill which would scrap Disability Living Allowance, or DLA, and replace it with a new scheme aimed at cutting spending in this area by 20%. The government victory, by the slender margin of just 16 votes, was a relief for the coalition. But the row over what campaigners see as penalising some of the most deserving in our society is far from over. Liz McKean reports.
DLA is my independence. Every day going out, shopping, going to socialise, visit people.
To live and work independently, Annalise White needs some help. Her disability living allowance, worth £100 a week, allows her to pay for the transport that means she can come to the office, do the shopping and visit her family.
If the allowance was cut, I wouldn't be able to do the things. I would have to rely on friends and family to come and pick me up and take me places and help me. And I love my independence. I want to be independent.
Changes to disability living allowance are part of deep reforms to the welfare state, aiming to cut £18 billion of spending. More than £2 billion of that will come from replacing DLA with a new personal independence payment. It will affect 2 million claimants of working age, that's 16 to 64. The government has announced the change, but given very little detail, not least how much the new benefit will actually be worth. And the uncertainty is adding to the resistance. Everybody receiving disability living allowance is worried that they are going to be affected. The number of working-age people claiming DLA has risen from 1.65 million in 2002 to 2 million in 2010 and is projected to reach 2.2 million by 2015. But the government says the change to the new scheme will slash that number to 1.7 million, taking 500,000 people off the benefit. Reformers say the change is overdue.
At the moment, people can actually get the benefit just by filling in forms. There isn't a medical assessment to ask them whether they're actually telling the truth. Effectively, the government just takes it on trust that you are telling the truth. And in fact, there's a cottage industry of firms who, for a fee, will show you how to fill in those forms and make sure you get the benefits. And as a result of all that, the number of people claiming DLA has trebled since it was first introduced, and the government's now spending £12 billion a year on that. And so all those payments, which are very important payments to people with really severe disabilities, will continue, but there will now be a medical assessment to make sure that the people who are getting it really need to get it.
But the assessments are controversial and led to the latest confrontation between peers and the government over welfare reform. Tonight, Baroness Grey-Thompson, the Paralympian, narrowly lost a vote to delay the new benefits introduction.
I've had nearly 600 emails from different disabled people saying they're terrified of the changes that are going to happen. It's really important that the assessment process will properly record if losing DLA has a negative impact.
Disability groups like the Papworth Trust, where Annalise works on reception 5 mornings a week, accept the case for reform. Currently, no allowance is made for the fact that people's levels of dependency can change. But they're highly suspicious about the fact the government has determined how much it will save before a single person has been assessed.
It feels to a lot of the disabled people who are commenting to us that their concern is they're trying to create an assessment that achieves a reduction in finances rather than try and create an assessment which fairly evaluates what people need and then take the cut at whatever that level might be.
Thursday the 8th. Yeah.
Annalise and her partner Keith manage their lives with help from the DLA and regular visits from their carer. The government says all those who need the new benefit will get it. But for Annalise, this is a time of insecurity over the thing she values so highly, her ability to live independently.
Liz McKean there. Well, listening to that report with me were Tanni Grey-Thompson, Baroness Grey-Thompson, the Paralympic athlete who is campaigning, as we saw, against government plans in the Lords, and the Conservative MP Harriet Baldwin, who's on the Work and Pensions Select Committee. Can I begin with the point that was made there that this is being done to save money, which is no doubt laudable, but because you've said it's going to be 20% savings, perhaps 500,000 people who won't get it, it sounds as if you've made that decision and you're just trying to fit everything else into the money-saving needs of this country.
Well, I'm glad that we're having this discussion because I'm on the select committee that's scrutinising the DLA PIP transfer at the moment, and we're taking evidence from people on this particular issue at the moment. And I just really want to reassure Annalisa and people like her all over my constituency and other constituencies that this personal independence payments that's coming in, the change is effectively that there will now be a face-to-face assessment, and secondly that the benefit will be assessed on a regular basis. And I think one of the things that's characteristic about the current DLA is that 70% of the awards are on a permanent basis and are never reassessed. And of course people's conditions can fluctuate over time, and so it's estimated that about 630 million is currently paid to people who no longer need it.
Right, but do you accept presumably the overall case for saving money where we can and that people shouldn't get benefits if they don't need it? So therefore, what are you actually worried about here?
Well, there's no doubt that, DLA did need reform, and I don't think anyone's arguing against that. I think there's a massive fear amongst disabled people about who will get cut, and especially when figures like 20% are bandied around. Is that 20% in numbers, 20% in funding? And the figures released yesterday that up to 500,000 disabled people could be affected is just terrifying, because DLA is used as a benefit. It's not an out-of-work benefit. It's available for everyone. It's used to sort of paper over the cracks in NHS support or local social service support. People use it to help make their house accessible, buy the right seating and equipment, and it's a really, really important benefit. It helps people get to work. My fear is that if those people get cuts, disabled people in work will find it hard to stay in work, and actually we could, without a really deep assessment process, we could be actually pushing a very large group of disabled people into an area where they have much more severe needs and more cost.
So therefore, is this 500,000, is that target? I mean, where did you get that number from? Because that is what worries people. People looking at it say, well, it's possibly going to be me.
That's terribly important, and the points that Tanni Grey is making there are really important, because this is a very valuable benefit to people which is paid whether you're in work or out of work. A large percentage of people who receive it actually don't even realise that. It is in fact a benefit that's paid to help people with the additional costs of either care or mobility.
But in terms of when you say our target is to save 20% and it could be 500,000 people who come off it, when the government says that, doesn't that give you, as somebody scrutinising this, pause for thought that that is the important thing for the government, and perhaps that's the wrong way to go about it? You should go about reform, face-to-face interviews should take place, you should take some time and then figure out how much you're going to save.
The amount paid out is 12.6 billion, and my understanding is the amount they're projecting to pay out by 2015-16 is going to be very, very broadly similar to what it was in 2009-10. So what's happening is that there's been quite a large increase in the number of people who are receiving this benefit, and that's logical if you assume that no one who has been receiving it for a long time has been reassessed. So there may be people whose conditions have improved, but they have not had that reassessment. So actually, I do agree with you that it's not helpful to be having this against the particular backdrop of budget pressures, because I think this is a reform that would have to happen irrespective of what kind of conditions the economy was in.
Are there any things that could be done? I know you put forward some amendments and they didn't get through, but I mean, are there any things that could be done which would retain the principle? You said it's been there for 20 years, it needs perhaps reviewing, that could keep that principle of review, but would make people a lot happier about face-to-face interviews, which presumably are quite an ordeal when people think about what that would involve.
They can be huge ordeals, especially for people who have fluctuating conditions on a daily basis, or people whose conditions aren't going to change. And some of the things that we spent a long time discussing both at committee and report is actually trying to make some decisions about who should have face-to-face interviews, who should be able to use medical evidence to support it, and it's making sure that we get the right process. But I think there's a lot of fear amongst disabled people, because people who've been through transition from IB to ESA feel quite distrustful of the assessment process. And if you look at ESA, there's a massively high turnover at appeal, there's a very high appeal rate, and I think people want to just feel a little bit more comfortable that the consultation has been carried out, that disabled people are involved. And one of the things that Lord Freud said tonight, very clearly, was that they wouldn't be using the social model of disability to implement this. And that's another fear that disabled people have, that they'll be locked away, they'll be ghettoised, and they won't have a chance to be integrated into society.
Is there a way that you can see through this, that keeping, perhaps either doing it for a trial period or trying it out in various areas to see how it actually works? Anything you could do that would ease people's fears without conceding the principle?
I think that the current application form, which is, I think, 60 plus pages, isn't it, is also not exactly a really easy way to apply for this benefit. So actually I think face-to-face could be something that really reassures people over time. But I do accept that when the work capability assessments were brought in under the previous government for people on incapacity benefit, that process, when it first started, didn't work very well, and there were a lot of appeals. And
hence
this government,
that Tanni Grey's
absolutely, that's the backdrop,
about.
that's the frame of reference that people potentially going through this new change are viewing this with. And there's no question that the government has brought in Professor Harrington to make improvements to that work capability assessment. He's done, I think he's on his second review now. And our select committee certainly reported on ways that process could definitely be improved.
Briefly, do you think there's some way that the opposition can go now, that you can still push this?
We'll still keep pushing it. I think what was very useful about today was that Lord Freud came a lot further forward in terms of what he's proposing. One area of concern I still have is that the assessors will still only have a broad education in disability, and we need to make sure that they have the right education so they're able to assess people properly. But as a disabled person, we'll keep fighting, we'll keep trying to protect those 500,000 disabled people.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.